G'day everyone, Merry Christmas and welcome to Monk's Christmas message. I thought, and I don't want everyone to turn this off, but I thought I'd give you my views on Jesus. I know when you say that, when you start talking about Jesus, people go, oh no, another fucking Bible basher. But I've got a bit of a different view on Jesus than any of the religious people that I've met. So I thought I'd just put it out there. So, but before I can do that, I really need to set the scene and just sort of go back a few thousand years. And I don't really want to get too much into his teachings. I'm just talking about more the man, you know, like. And you can look at it as an idea that the teachings of Jesus or the story of Jesus is an analogy, or it's a story somebody made up for morality and whatever like that. However you choose to use it, you know. But it's you got to remember what the people were like 2,500 or whatever the hell years ago. They were pretty lawless and pretty radical when it came to punishment and everything like that. I mean, if a woman walked down the street, much as in the Middle East today, and she did the wrong thing, had her hair uncovered or whatever the hell, they'd stone her to death as a slut, you know, and things like that. So it's a time where the old eye for an eye is virulent. And Jesus came along to teach unconditional love, because he could see that the nature of their lives as a barbaric and kind of violent people wasn't an admirable way to live. And it was also a time of Roman occupation, so the Roman armies were invaded the Holy Land, and the Jewish, you know, the what are they called? Sanhedrin, who was the head of the Jewish church, who were the power at the time until the Roman army took over, had been shoved aside, and so the people all had their noses out of joint because they were an occupied people. And there was a big rising, a rebellion rising at the time, and people often thought that Jesus, because he had such a lot of followers, was raising a rebellion army, because he was talking about a new world, a better way and everything else like that, and everybody at that time was considering that he was talking about fighting back, mostly. And so he took 12 disciples, right, 12 blokes that he knew very well, and began to teach them what he had been given as a message by God to teach. And having received a message myself that I can only say was once from God, I can't say for my own self that I would doubt his message in any way, especially when it does teach love through forgiveness and love thy enemy and everything. Those are very admirable things, even if they are kind of hard to live up to. But I want to just take a look for a second at these 12 disciples, right? So you've got all these fishermen, right? Now you imagine this is a lawless society, pretty lawless society, or a society in chaos with the soldiers, occupation, punishment, everything. People are getting crucified. Jesus wasn't the only one to get crucified. If you're a thief, you get crucified. Robber, crucified. People are getting crucified, stoned, bloody whipped and flogged, and like horrible time. So Jesus has got 12 disciples, one tax collector. Now, can you imagine being a fucking tax collector at that time? You're knocking on people's doors wanting money? You would have had to have been a big bloke. I think it was Simon the tax collector. You wouldn't have been no little skinny lad fucking that couldn't fight. You would have been a big bloke. Probably one of the biggest blokes in town. Right? Same as a debt collector today, I suppose. And you got all these other blokes who are predominantly fishermen. Right, and Jesus is a carpenter. He would have had to cut his own wood. He would have had arms of steel and muscles, and you know, he wouldn't have been no puny bloke. And these 12 fishermen are blokes who spend all day, or the other blokes who are fishermen spend all day casting nets and pulling in fish. Now I don't know about you, but I saw in the Olympics a few years back, Dean Lucan, who was a tuna fisherman and he was a champion weightlifter. He had arms like fucking tree trunks, and he said that his arms developed, his muscles and that was from tuna fishing, not from lifting weights. So all day these blokes are pulling in nets full of fish, right? They would have had arms of steel, right? So Jesus has basically got a front row of footballers following him around, and they're pretty much like a bodyguard. And the reason they're like a bodyguard is because he was upsetting the authority of the time. Right now, back in those days, you couldn't go into the synagogue to pray if you were diseased or sick or a very poor, lower caste person. You had to be somebody of character, because you weren't seen as to be worthy to go before God. And Jesus came along and goes, no, that's a load of shit. I'm going to teach all the poor people and the sick people out on the steps right in front of your fucking temple and see if you like it. So he started bloody teaching and rubbing their noses in it, and they didn't like it. They chased him out everywhere he went. But he had these 12 disciples, these 12 big blokes, so no harm came to him until the time when he decided that he was going to turn himself in. And he did that willingly, because he had to make the demonstration that there is no death. Right now, that's a matter of faith for everybody to take on. It's not for me to tell you whether all those particulars of the Bible are there. But Jesus was a bloke, to me, who gave his life. He found something that could make other people's lives better. A way of living, a way of communicating with each other, and practicing some principles of love through forgiveness. And remember, they're a barbaric people. That's a big step to take. Right? Love through forgiveness, and finding a connection, a higher connection with Source to help do that. Right? To defer doing that through, if you like. So he's a bloke that stood up for what he believed, died for what he believed, and resurrected for what he believed. And he would probably tell you himself he never did die, because spirit is eternal. But I just want to put that out there as the Christmas message, because it tends to get a bit overlooked in the Western society, the Christmas message. But I love Jesus. I think he was a fucking legend. And having all them disciples, you know, it's just like, man, those blokes, to follow that guy around for 3 years, to give up their jobs. And I mean, if you're a backbreaking fisherman in those days, it wouldn't take much to get you to give that up, I'll bet. But to follow that bloke around for 3 years, and to reputedly see the miracles he did, and the healings and the teachings and whatever, it's like, there must have been something going on. There had to have been something greater than just the man himself. You know, if you or I stood up in a town square and called on our mates and said, hey, I'm going to go and teach this to other people, come with me, you'd be like, oh, no, mate, you're on your own. And so would I, more than likely. So, you know, but for a bloke to stand up and live by his convictions and to do that, that's a rare thing today, right to the end. And I know from my own personal experience, I've found it quite difficult to be able to do that so far in my journey. And I've had lots of times where I've taken a knee and asked for help to do the right thing, and to forgive myself and others for things that have happened in my life. And I'm grateful for those teachings to be in my life, because they have made it better, and have made my life, in a sense, heaven on earth. So here's to JC, and I'm wishing you and your family all a Merry Christmas. And I love you. Seriously, I do. I love you. Thank you.